Hi, welcome to the launch of the issue Temple and Gallery, our December 2024 issue of Garland, which is the fourth in the series, Together Spaces, which was conceived as a kind of a post-COVID series, looking at how it is coming out of lockdowns and isolation that we seek to come together, but also part of the adventure of looking in the broader world where people make things and share things, not just in a gallery space, which of course is very important, but in the sorts of spaces where people come together and connect with each other. And that this is a very important element, particularly in a world where we're becoming increasingly isolated with phenomena like online shopping and social media and so on. So this particular issue is focusing on the temple, and it's a sacred space. And I'm talking to you now in the land of the Wurundjeri people, Naarm, Melbourne, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and also to the ancestors of the lands where you come from. In a settler colony like Australia, we have a tension between the sacred spaces of the First Nations people and economic development, particularly mining. And we find that there has been some terrible incidents in the past, some of which we've covered in Garland, where some of these sacred sites have been destroyed in the process of ripping up the land. So it's something which is a very poignant one in Australia, in particular, given the fact that we're on the land of the First Nations peoples. So this is the fourth in a series. We started off with the street, looking at particularly public craft, the objects that people share, like murals and so on. Then we looked at the land, the way people come together in places like residencies in country, where they have a shared interest in the environment and a custodianship in that particular locale. The table, which is the way in which, through organizations supporting craft, people come together to create a social body for that. And this one, the temple gallery, is looking at the sacred spaces. And part of the interest is to see how far we can go in our work with these spaces to understanding how galleries themselves operate, not just as fancy decorative shops, but as places of contemplation where we step outside the busyness of the world in order to experience things at a more profound level. So I'd like to start off just by sharing my screen, going back to just go back to the issue, and to note that this issue is dedicated to Teodora Blanco Nunez, who was a ceramicist from Mexico. Every issue we do dedicate it to a significant maker, craft figure, and she comes from Oaxaca. Here's one of her works, and we've featured uh, people from Oaxaca before, and they represent a very important creative expression of Zapotec culture, which has a very strong sense of the spirits, the animal spirits that are connected to individual humans. And as you can see, her work marvelously integrates these spirits into the figure of a human. And her work in the 50s and 60s was quite groundbreaking, and many have come through. And we've also featured a lot of the Zapotec Alebrije makers who also do similar kinds of works in wood as well. So now if we start looking at the rundown, I'm very pleased to welcome David Chia, who very fortunately was able to share a remarkable time just before this issue in Laos, and to share with us a story about the work that he did with some of the monks there. David, welcome. Will you tell us about your article?
Oh, hi everyone. Hi Kevin. Yes, well, thank you for inviting me to contribute to this article. Sorry, this. Oh, am I unmuted? There's a
Yeah, we can
little
hear you.
thing. Oh, okay. Sorry, there was a little notice here. Okay. Um, yeah, I know, Kevin, you first invited me to talk, to share about my artwork and the development and how it's influenced by the temple stencils. But I thought this was actually more interesting with because of the temple theme. It's just working with the monks who are actually taking an active interest in actually preserving the art form, the stenciling work within the temple itself. Um, and I think just to see them getting excited and researching it and stenciling, it's just that extra level of well, just a level of connection really, because prior to this was more stenciling as decorative art form, whereas now they're taking more of an active interest in it and also preserving this art form in the temples. Yeah.
And what's the festival that's occurring around this time? It's something we have a
Oh,
lot of interest in.
um, okay, so it's Bunok Pansa, which is the end of the 3 months. It's like the end of the Vasa or Pansa. I guess in English, in Western terms, it's called the Lent, the Buddhist Lent. So it's the end of the 3 months where the monks going to retreat, and then it's a light festival to celebrate that because sometimes monks going to retreat just for the 3 months, and it's seen like a form of merit making for the family. So yeah, it happens with it's a lunar thing. It happens with the full moon at the end of the 3 months. Yeah, so there's actually light festival and also a parade as well, like releasing little offerings into the river.
Yes, and I note you make the point in your article about the stencils under the influence of Thai knit that reflect the everyday life in the monastery, as we can see here, which is quite interesting.
Yes, I just found it fascinating that, suddenly just to see in their eyes, when they actually stenciling, just that whole recognition. Oh, that's us, doing the alms give, little cats and dogs that are on the compound, in the compound. And so it's just that level connection with what they're doing as well.
Right. I'll just go
Actual
steadily to
stenciling.
the end of that. Okay, thank you so much, David, for that
Thank
wonderful
you.
story. And Jackie, I noticed you just recently joined us. Uh, would you like to well, it's a conversation really that we had about your installation at the IOTA, the Indian Ocean Craft Triennial. Are you there, Jackie?
I am. Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hi. You had a remarkable story to tell, Jackie.
Oh, you just put me on the spot here, Kevin.
Maybe just talk about briefly this work, the idea of weaving joss paper.
Well, in brief, to encapsulate the whole story, it was really very much about building our own little private temple and a way of surveilling individual objects. I think this particular notion of lucky charms came about with the idea of, look, there's so many layers to it. I'm just going to try to break it down. Came about from the idea of the psychological impact that my grandmother had for her when she used moon blocks. So the moon blocks were in. Actually, I do have the shape here. I might just show you on the screen very quickly. I look like, yeah, there it is. For those who don't know what moon blocks are, they are shaped literally in halves. So these are the divination blocks that you use in terms of to ask questions. So you do it in the rounds of three. I mean, well, my grandmother does it in rounds of three. So what you do is you clamp them together and you ask your questions, serious questions, nothing too flimsy or whatsoever. You ask your question and you throw up in the air and you drop it on the ground. So however it falls, it will tell you the answer of yes, no, or the gods are laughing. So it could be like, this is no, this is yes, and then that's any way of that, it will be the answer of how you see it. So I think I watched my grandmother as a kid growing up, thinking about, all these other anxieties that she had. And I really want to sort of capture the idea of what this blocks mean for her and how it encapsulates the lucky charms around the house and how we see them. So I think to really briefly talk about this is very much about building a little private temple for myself, actually, in the gallery space, and wanted to showcase the individual impacts or the beauty of Lucky Charms. And all these Lucky Charms are just obviously made as an object of beauty. It's not referencing anything at all. But the most important component here was the taboo subjects behind using joss papers. So within the community or within my household, using joss papers other than just burning them for to pay respects for your deities, for the ancestors, you're actually not meant to play with it. So I'm just trying to sort of traverse the whole conversation between taboos and the psychological impacts, and what's yes, what's no, what's right, what's wrong, and really ultimately bring it back into an object of beauty within your own safe space.
Great. And here are some scenes that you shared with us of the temple in Malaysia, is that right?
Yes, temple in Malaysia. And this is a very particular, my dad has this very strict ways of actually showing respect to ancestors, disregarding everyone else in the room who might need the space. He goes, no, everyone, you have to kneel and pay respect to my grandmother and my grandfather there. So it's a ritual when we do go home, and the first thing we do is actually go visit my grandmother, because she is the matriarch of the family, and she sort of left home, left China in a state of where she brought China with her. So we were practicing her practices. Funny enough, when I compare some notes with other friends in China or in Taiwan, certain aspects in Taiwan, we still meet the same similar ways of working in, or even paying respects to deities and ancestors. But a lot of the practice are quite muddled in a way that I feel quite lost, in a sense that, there are terms of where, I'm sort of like traversing the in-between spaces of not knowing what's the right way of doing things and what's not the right way of doing things. But this is going to be a lifelong journey, as long as I have my mom or my relatives or anyone who is still practicing within the Taoist ways. I still have them to look to in terms of, seeking advices or working and traversing in a safe way, in safe space. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie. And if you read the story, you'll hear how being far from the source of the culture in terms of the temples of Malaysia in Broome is also a way of appreciating very much the importance of those traditions from a distance. And this seems to be a story that's shared by a number of people. So thank you so much, Jackie, for that. Now I'd like to talk about a story that comes from the words of people involved in the Great Stupa of Universal Compassion, and wanted in this issue to look at the temple construction occurring in a country like Australia, where we find there are churches closing down, Christian churches. We see them sold off for various sorts of housing and cafes and so on. But in the meantime, in the outskirts of cities, and in this case in the bush, we find these quite monumental compounds developing, which have the most extraordinary community buy-in in terms of the collaboration. This is the magnificent mandala ceiling that's going to be put in towards the end of next year, and all artists working together. The great jade Buddha that was carved from a rock that cost nearly $1 million in Canada. The Vietnamese foundries that produce the great sculptures. So it's an international achievement in terms of this, and the various events that it has, like the Vegetarian Festival, which has a blessing of the animals, and rituals like the bathing of the baby Buddha for children. So this is very much an ongoing story. We hope to keep you in touch with it, so that we can see how a space like this, which is quite large, almost like a national gallery, continually adds new works of makers from various parts of particularly the Asian region. Now I'd like to go to Tamal Bhattacharya. Are you here, Tamal?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, great. Good.
Hello.
Could you put the video on? Are you able to?
I'm for the construction designing for the mural for one school building. That's why I'm busy here. So that's the join and I continue the meeting. It's pretty sorry everybody. I'm for the site right now for the school building, and this is going for the mural work. Okay. Hello.
Hello, yes. I'll
Yeah.
just put your article up.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Good. So you're restoring the terracotta tiles of the temple in Bengal.
Yes. Yes, Kevin. I'm pastor from Shantiniketan and Kalabhavan, and master from the NSU Baroda. And right now, this is my good achievement for this terracotta temple for 200 years old temple. Okay, this is for the terracotta work. Yes. So many noise. That's why the
And what's this we have on screen at the moment? Are you still with us?
around.
That's from the main temple, I gather.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, the main temple. Main temple, and all over the tiles work for the Nova tiles. This is the Nova tiles basically.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Nova tiles. This is a short video.
Yes. So it's wonderful to see that the temples are not just completed, but they require a lot of ongoing work, and that needs the skills of people like you to
Yes. Thank you.
maintain them. So and it's great that you can share this story directly.
Yeah, this is for the basically the 200 years old temple, and this is name is the Kali Khetra. This is called the Calcutta come to for this name. The Kali Khetra coming from this name for the Calcutta. This is very old history, and this is mainly created for the Shawanrai Chaudhury's family. And this Kali comes from the farms and for the protect for the wall. That's why. But that is right now it's not making for the styles. And now I recreate this type of styles. That is my achievement.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bhattacharya.
Okay. Sorry. I'm very sorry, Kevin. I'm busy for the another topic. That's why I'm so many noise.
Oh,
Sorry,
glad, I'm so
everybody.
pleased you could join us. Thank you so much. And now I call on
Okay. Thank you, all of you.
Kruti Tolakia. Are you here, Kruti?
Yeah. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So, like as the title says, it is all about the integration or the incorporation of Lord Krishna depiction in the Indian art and craft. But like it is very interesting, and that is how the story goes about that how this particular um scene came to my mind. Like there was a Lord Krishna's birthday, and I was just so generally you tend to think about and tend to relate each and every aspect with the field you work in. And my core area is art and craft, and so specifically textile arts. And that is how it clicked to my mind that in many of the art textile crafts, Lord Krishna has a very unmissable and very important place. The artisans practice it at a widely. And if I talk about this particular piece, it is one of the journal piece of during the college days, the students how they do, and that is how I started my textile art and craft connection. And if I can show this is the piece which I have embroidered, where the Krishna is milking cow, accompanied by Gopi and all. So unfortunately, this piece has not been published, Kevin. So if I can request you to publish this image of this particular piece of Chambarumal. So this is how it was started. And so I called my faculty, Dr. Reena Bhatia, and the conversation in the article goes about then how deeply the connection of the art and craft with Lord Krishna and the artisan roams around, like in the Pattachitra, in Pichwai, done with the beadwork or any other craft like in Odisha. So wherever there is a Lord Krishna's temple, yeah. So this is a Pichwai of Rajasthan. So in a contemporized way. So, but then when I thought about this particular issue, when I come across about this temple and gallery issue, so then again I linked that this thought process with this issue, and then I ask myself what is, because I do not believe in the idol worshipping. So then I ask myself a question that what is a temple? Is it just a structure, the architectural structure? So that one was from the Odisha Rath Yatra procession. This is from the traditional dance forms of Kerala, and this is from the temple of Srinathji Haveli. So Srinathji is one of the incarnation of Lord Krishna. So, so yeah, so continuing with my belief. So, and then on the contrary, the Indian artisans incorporate so much of deities, not only Lord Krishna, but Lord Rama, Shiv, and all other deities. So, I concluded that probably this is the kind of a worship which is there, not if not the idol worship, this is how they depict, or they show their soulful connection with Lord through their art and craft. And art and craft is again a meditative experience, a soulful activity. So I found that connection as, and that is how I thought to write a article in this particular issue. So. So like I believe in totally law of karma and my faculty. So that if you refer to the article, it refers to the conversation in between me and Dr. Reena Bhatia, who has been my faculty, who introduced me to this world. So and she is a believer of humanity. So, and I think Lord Krishna connects to both. He tells the stories about law of karma and the humanity as well. So that is how this entire article we have bound it together. So I hope the reader loves it to read it. And yeah, so we are happy to receive the feedback or the remarks or any thought on further on this particular line. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Kruti, for being part of the conversation, and hope you enjoy the rest of the Garland journey. You've certainly made a substantial contribution to it. And now I'd like to go to a very interesting article by Kaustav Chatterjee. Are you able to join us, Kaustav?
Hello, am I audible
Hello.
now?
Yes, you are.
Great, yeah.
Great. I'll show you
So,
a very interesting
hello.
article here. There you are. We can hear you.
Yes, yes. So, thank you so much for inviting me to this gathering. And so, this is actually a kind of long-term exploration what I have been working with, which is called Mott in Bengali. So, it's a kind of sugar craft. So, it is mostly a religious craft, so which I identify the sacred craft. And so in this article, I have located a region which is Shantipur. Shantipur is a kind of small town in the district of Nadia in West Bengal. So this craft producers are residing there and producing the craft, like sugar craft Mott. And mostly this craft is associated with the particular festival, Rash festival, which is called Rash Utsav. And this is actually happening in the Shantipur. So this article actually explores the kind of interdependencies with festival and craft, and in between, the temple became the locus of the the searching for the workshops and the artisans. So, and the kind of triangular relationship is happening there in terms of temple, festival, and the craft. So in between, I have explored the whole region area in terms of residential places, stores. This is a kind of grocery store. This is a public shrines, and all this have that kind of Vaishnavite articulation in its names to appearance and everywhere. So this is a Samshatiu temple, which is a kind of significant temple, a very like 500-year-old temple under the Archaeological Survey of India protection. So, so this is the kind of this is the place where Shamshaji temple. I found the informants, the artisans, and the in between informants who actually introduced me to the kind of locality Mothpara, and so I have explored the other occupations the artisans have been doing. Is like this weaving, like they're weaving gamchas and sharis. The Shantipur Tat is very famous, and also they're working with the jute cultivation. And so what is interesting is there also like how they are dependent with the not only festival, also the kind of ecology of the kind of locality. So the very nearby river is the river Hooghly, the tributary of Ganga. So this is the kind of whole glimpse of the artisanal production craft and the temple and the festivals and all together. So this is the image from the Rash festival. So this is presiding deities Radha and Krishna, and this is the Kirtan performance happening during the Ras festival at the same temple. So there are a lot of things to explore and examine and look. So yeah, this is a very kind of introduction to my project, and thank you for uh, making it happen for the larger audience. So yeah, thank you so much.
And thank you for sharing that remarkable story, which evokes very much the series we had last year on the sensorium, looking at the way in which bringing all the senses together, the smell, the sound, but also taste, is very much an important part of rituals. Now, just very quickly, another story that relates to temples in the diaspora. I visited the Sri Bakaratunda Vinayaga temple in one of the outer suburbs of Melbourne. As you can see, it's a very inauspicious entry to it. It's not the place where you'd expect something remarkable to happen, but I was very pleased and honored to be welcome to this temple and to be given a tour of the various shrines and deities that are present in the temple and have it explained in terms of how these deities are looked after and honored, with a particular interest in this deity Ardhanarishvara, the one that combines the male and female as a duality, and this one seemed to have a lot of offerings made to it. And anyway, it was a Monday evening, and there was a lot of activity happening during that time in terms of the libations provided to the deities, the various food that they were being given, a lot of music, a lot of rules about what one should do, and various ways in which sacredness was gleaned, such as the water that was washed, this deity is washed with, then becomes water that people can use for blessings. It's collected, a lot of diya, the candles, of course, and little offerings. And I can't really explain in too much detail. We haven't got enough time to look at the extraordinary epic construction of this from granite taken from southern India, where so many hundreds of people, artisans and so on, involved in the carving of the main shrine here. And a wonderful sense of community, the volunteer cooks who make superb masala dosa for participants, amazing music being performed. And in the end, I think what's floored me particularly was my host offered to have a photograph of all the priests involved, and as somebody from a foreigner in that culture, I felt very self-conscious and didn't want to be too much of a voyeur, but they seemed to appreciate this attention, which pleased me, and so they're very open to that. And at the end of the evening, I said, well, what was this festival? What was this special occasion? And I couldn't believe that they told me, well, actually, we do this every night. So just the intensity of this happening off the grid, so to speak, in a outer suburban Melbourne. It was a wonderful thing to discover. Okay, now I would like to go to Indonesia with Akbar Adi Satrio. Are you with us? Would you like to join us?
Hi, Kevin. Sorry, I just got home. Could you give me 5 minutes?
Okay,
probably?
we'll get to you later.
Sure,
Then
thanks.
I think we'll next go to the guest editor for this issue, Pamela C. Mei Ling, who has been probably the most
Oi,
prolific.
Koi,
I'll just try and put you on mute.
Hello.
Most prolific contributor to. Sorry, Pamela, I just put you on mute by mistake. To Garland, if you could unmute yourself again.
I have to admit, Kevin, I mean, firstly, I'm so very grateful for this opportunity that you've given me to experience what you do all the time, professionally editing, and meet some really amazing writers. But I have to admit that when this was brought up in the same context of my being so prolific, I'd wondered if it was some kind of a punishment, actually, just for writing so much. And I've been so very, honored to actually, I wrote an essay, and then through our investigations up in the northern part of Australia, in Queensland, central Queensland and Rockhampton, found some extraordinary stories. You allowed me to write another, and that was largely because of the availability of the people involved. So is it okay, given that I have two, that I speak to the Rockhampton article, please?
Sure.
Is because I'm aware of time, so I don't need to hold the floor for too long. And it's also because I think that story in particular relates to, David, you're bringing up Vasa. I think it was that there was a community there that I visited from Sri Lanka, and they're establishing a Buddhist, they have a Buddhist temple that's been running since, I think, around 2019 from an old Queenslander that one of their congregation, he owns, he allows them to use it. But they're actually building a pagoda outside, and they started, I think it was Vasana I think that festival that you mentioned, David, with your article, that they started that period when the monks go in and they have sort of a period of abstinence, isolation there. So, and also with Kevin's, so much of what you said struck a chord for me, because your mention of these sacred spaces. When we look at the cultural landscape and who has the power to actually influence the infrastructure, it's just that these amazing cultural facilities aren't always visible. And I've been to Rockhampton many times, but being completely oblivious to spaces like this. So coming back to Sri Lankan community, they built it into a Queenslander, their temple. And this is this space they've called, it's the old meals, the meals area, which they've turned into, forgive my poor pronunciation, but a Buddha Madura. I think it's called a shrine area. And what I find most fascinating is that if you have a look there, they have acquired a Buddha statue from the Sunshine Coast, which is a little bit south of Rockhampton by probably around, say, 800 kilometers. But what's interesting about the area is it's not the statue, but there's a what Amal, there was a person who showed me around this temple, and he called a Sawanga Duthu, and it's a brass vessel which actually contains remains of the first Buddha, Siddhara Gautama. So this temple, and I'm just thinking that some of the people listening today, it just depends on I guess that your experience of various faiths, but there are so many denominations of Buddhism as well. Like my family, we went to we go to they still go to a temple, but it's from Taiwan, and it doesn't worship the same deity. And so another extraordinary thing about what they're doing there, well, there's so many amazing things, but I mean, firstly, they're building the committee themselves. They're sort of developing the concepts, and then doing the drawings, and then constructing from whatever resources they're able to acquire here and in Australia. So, for instance, they showed me how they're for the skirt of the pagoda, which they call a Peza Wallalu, the rings at the bottom, they shape their own kind of like a wooden edging, concrete edging tool, and then they attached it to an arm, and in the middle of the actual pagoda, the foundation of it, and they've been spinning it around to create that cylindrical form. So yeah, and also they drew my attention to a Bodhi tree where they've kind of put an altar up temporarily on these concrete bricks, and the Amal, he's the person that showed me around the temple, explained to me that this Bodhi tree was also something they were using for now, because they had a cutting, they have a cutting of from the original Bodhi tree, so third generation, he said, that also relates back to the one where the first Buddha found enlightenment as well. So it's this real sense of, I think, how diaspora communities see sacred spaces through one of the ways they do it is through their craft. And so in the article, I also visited the remains of a Chinese temple as well. So these artifacts have been moved around 3 times since the 19th century. So over like a century and a bit. And presently the artifacts, they reside in a clubhouse, which is Besser brick as well. So outside is just it's very unassuming. And if you see thank you, Kevin. This is Dorothy Koo, who's the secretary, who married a person from China. But she also showed me around, and she's hoping to raise funds to restore this amazing altar. The gold, it was gilded before, but it's come off. But we were lucky to have some information from a scholar from China, Dr. Su Ming, who explains, well, he was able to identify the workshop, which was in Foshan, in Guangdong province, which is quite near where my family come from too. And so you see the filigree that's there, it's amazing because it's all been carved out of wood. But of particular interest to researchers is this right in the middle, it's probably hard to see there, but in this photo, but a plaque, and it's dedicated to he was a Song Dynasty official named Chen Lao Guang. And so this plaque of what they found in China during the 19th century was that apparently if you made offerings to this plaque, it made the pestilence, like the plague, it stopped that from spreading. And so there was this proliferation of these plaques all over China. And then so researchers are fascinated to find one here, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and just lastly, I just wanted to point out, thank you so much for this time to speak to you about these matters, is that Sue also pointed out that this is what they would regard the temple as a Li Shengong, which is a particular kind of temple. And I think some of the other people here today might recognize that in other places of the world, there are other anglicized versions of that Chinese term. So within Queensland, for instance, in Cairns, there was the Lit Sangung. In Innisfail, there's the Lit Singong. And it's just the way that they actually pronounce those characters. So in Rockhampton, it's the Lit Singun. And what it is, it's a kind of temple. So I think here they mistaken that for the name of the temple, but it's more like I mean, it literally translates something like into the sanctum for the martyrs. So, so meaning quite prescriptively that it's dedicated to a person that had been living before and become deified. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you so much for
Thank
that
you.
knowledge, Pamela, Mei Ling, and for looking at these spaces as they evolved and something we can keep track of. So now I'd like to introduce Akbar Adi Satrio from
Hi.
talking of from Indonesia.
First, sorry for the interruptions. I just literally a few seconds away after opening my apartment door. So yeah, thank you, Kevin, for the opportunity to share my. This is part of my research actually. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to write and share the stories. So what I'm trying to share here in my article is about Mamolo. It is a decorations, much like a crown for a local traditional mouse in Indonesia, particularly in Java. So most of us usually recognize the dome of mouse usually in the form of a globular dome. But in Java, because we have a long history, where in the past there are a lot of foreign influence, such as Hinduism influence, Buddhism influence, and even far before that, we practicing animism, and that puts much stories in our histories, including in Mamolo. So Mamolo is the crown for traditional mouse in Java. And there are not many makers here in Java that still make this Mamolo. So as part of my PhD research, I interact or get in touch with a local traditional pottery in City Wenangun and found out that they still make this Mamolo and still producing up until this time. But unfortunately, there are only few of them that still making this Mamolo. One person that I managed to get in touch with is his name is Pak Katmia. He's one of the senior pottery in City Wenangun. In his daily life, he's actually a civil servant in local government office, but in his separate time, he still making ceramics, not only Mamolo, but also local traditional tableware of City Wenangun. It's kind of unfortunate because City Wenangun is a pottery village, and most of the craftspeople there, or the villagers there, practicing as craftspeople, but not many of them continuing the craft culture that actually already exists for probably hundreds of years before. So the active potters in City Wenangun actually probably below 100%. It's getting lower and lower each year because of the demands of traditional pottery, especially one that made of earthenware clays or the red clay is getting lower and lower. And the more advanced and more stronger ceramics, such as tableware made from stoneware or porcelains, are more in the trend and in the market right now. So they're getting lost in the market. And with this article, I want to utilize it as an opportunity to reintroduce them to the world of the beauty of their works, especially in the Momolo making. In City Wenangun itself, only Pak Katmia that's still practicing and making the Momolo. Other potters in City Wenangun, they are still make potteries, but more towards making the daily functional objects such as tablewares or large jugs that more functional and more acceptable to the nowadays market. So yeah, but it is interesting because Pak Katmia is still persistent in making the Momolo, believing that it is the identity of the City Wenangun itself. It is the identity of his own belief as an Indonesian, as a Muslim, where Muslim Indonesia, based on his opinion, is quite unique compared to Muslim in other countries because of our long history. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful story from City Wenangan that I could share.
Thank you very much,
Kevin.
Akbar, terima kasih. But I think what
Sama-sama.
you demonstrate, which is a thread coming through many of the stories, is that these spaces are not just heritage. They're not some historical remnant, but they're living spaces that require, constant making there. And well, Garland's going to be at the Intercraft 25th celebration in Jakarta in February. So we'll try and see whether we can use that to promote their work through your good work with this article.
Looking forward to that. Yeah.
Now I'd like to welcome Lucia. If you'd like to start your video with us.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
There you are. Good morning. Thank you for getting up so early for us. And your work is quite remarkable because it involves a Christian church, and it's, I think, a rare mention of Christianity in our issue, which is good. And an exhibition in a sacred space.
Yes, so that was an amazing project that I've started back in 2019 before COVID, and it was part of my.
I'm sorry, you've just frozen. So we'll just give Lucia a minute, and we might need to move on to Aishani now from the MAP Academy, who've been such a wonderful.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, something happened with at my end.
Yeah, that's fine. Anyway, so the whole story was about, the sacred spaces, how relevant are today, how relevant craft is today, what can we learn from that? So what that project brought was like 3 organizations together, like an academic organization, a civic organization like the church, and the culture organization. So this view, so the cathedral has, as I said, 800 years of history. The works department is still in operation. So it's like how people are passing the knowledge from generation to generation in order to maintain the cathedral, expand the cathedral, fix like the different aspects. And the exhibition happened in St. Edmund Church, which is the consecrated church in again in Salisbury, very close to the cathedral. So that actually I found it interesting when you said about how like the churches are changing purposes earlier in one of the presentations. So the church is an art center since the 1973. So actually it serves the same sort of purpose of people going in the space, that community building that those sacred spaces are doing. And so I thought that should actually recreate that sort of like space, in that sacred space of where the old, anyway, we had like so we created that sort of space in the altar. So we had like the contemporary photography that is inspired by Zen. We had the textiles that were hanging from the building, that they were inspired by the cathedral. What it was on the brief to the students was that we didn't want to document the cathedral, it was to see their responses. And it was interesting because UCA, the University for the Creative Arts, has an international, sort of like a very international school. And a lot of the students that they visited the cathedral, they haven't seen such sort of like architecture, they haven't been to such a place before. So it was a really interesting educational and learning experience of learning another culture. And the final thing that it was, I think, more exciting was the music composition by Dr. Hallie Wally and Akira. So they gathered the sounds from the cathedral. There was a couple of photographs earlier about popping up balloons. So they pop up balloons inside the cathedral. They capture the sound of the impulse response, and then they use that into their composition. And overall, it was really exciting. It was, and we performed so it's here. So that is after midnight. It was, we organized a visit to the cathedral after midnight to pop up balloons. So then they can actually capture the essence of the space. And then when we did the opening at the Art Center in St. James and St. Edmund's Church, the composers used electronics and amplifiers, and they actually made the people hear the performance as if they were inside the cathedral. So it was really fun, sort of like using technology, light, sound, and everything to play. And yes, it was a really exciting project of collaboration. You know, we all worked together really nicely with really, a very exciting time. So thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, Lucia, for a really unique contribution to this issue. And it really opens up new kind of opportunities in terms of the connection between sacred spaces and the gallery. Thank you. Now, the last two stories are quite closely connected. They're about the Pandal, which is kind of an interstitial space, sacred space that occurs during the Durga Puja festival. We start with Aishani Gupta from the wonderful Map Academy, who shared a remarkable article about the Pandal in India. Would you like briefly to talk to this, Aishani?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much, Kevin, for this wonderful opportunity and for inviting me to this meetup today. Basically, my article is about Durga Puja in Kolkata, which is the capital city of West Bengal in eastern India. So for 5 days in autumn, every year, Bengalis across the globe revel in the worship of Goddess Durga, the supreme female deity in the Hindu pantheon. But across neighborhoods of urban Kolkata, craftsmen and workers build temples of various traditional and eclectic designs to house the goddess. Now, these temporary temples, often made of bamboo, wood, and other sort of interesting materials, are called pandals, and these are dismantled once the festival is over. So in this article, I basically talk about these temporary sacred installations and the kind of journey that audiences, craftsmen, workers, organizers, all of them have to take to convert what is essentially a sacred space into beautiful sort of public art installations or public art galleries, basically. The question that I ask is, how do the sacred, the artistic, the commercial, the carnivalesque, the banal, how does all of it sort of intertwine at these temporary sacred sites? How do they allow us to think about, impermanent temples or temporary sacred spaces as sites where, creative expressions are ever changing? And the sacred is, if you think about it, reinforced by the non-sacred. And just the discussion today has already been so enriching in this regard. For example, Jackie made a mention briefly of the right ways of doing things and the wrong ways of doing things when it comes to performing rituals. Kruti also had a really poignant question, like, what is a temple really? Is it simply a permanent structure? Or are there other ways in which the sacred can be expressed, or other places where the sacred resides? And all of this really is at the heart of how communities practice religion across the globe today. And that was my approach in this article, basically. How does the modern worship of the sacred feminine in mammoth temporary installations toe the line between the sacred and the non-sacred? And of course, I loved reading Mitraja's article on Durga Puja in Melbourne as well. I made a brief mention of it to you, Kevin, at the beginning. I love the way she writes that Durga Puja, the pandals serve as sanctuaries of cultural continuity. That was just the phrase, I just loved it so much, helping individuals and families anchor themselves to their heritage. It was just such a great comparative sort of analysis of experiences of pandal hopping in India and in Australia. And I love how she brings out the personal experience of the person who goes pandal hopping. So loved it really.
Well, that's very generous of you, Aishani, to segue to the next speaker. But thank you so much for your erudition, and you continue the great tradition of MAP Academy contributions to Garland, which are so rich. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Now, finally, Mitra Tobias, who's a Garland laureate, one of our essayists, who in this issue continued the path towards the Pandal, but on the other side of the Indian Ocean. Mitra, would you like to speak to your experience from Melbourne?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much, Kevin, once again for trusting me with the fourth Garland article. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much, Ashini. I think you summed up all the speakers quite well, and my thoughts also resonate with yours. When I saw your article, I felt that it was very complimentary because there was a lot of pictures. A lot of descriptive analysis in mine, which pictures have covered in yours, and there's a lot of background that you've given, which I think both articles complement each other in that sense. My take on temporary spaces, I think when I read the brief, there were so many thoughts that came to me. But the one that struck was how the in the Indian culture, we have temporary spaces, not just for Durga Puja, but for a lot of other festivals throughout the year. And I picked this because I had experienced Durga Puja, like Ashini mentioned, in Kolkata, and being from Gujarat, because I'm not from Kolkata. I did not know what it was, or what the hype was all about, until I experienced it myself. And the experience of visiting Durga Puja pandal was out of the world for me, and that too in Kolkata. And we've seen the images that Ashini shared; they are just grand, and you would really want to think that you wouldn't think that these will be dismantled in five, like after 5 days. The structures that are being taking 6 to 9 months to build, just to be dismantled at the end of Durga Puja is so striking. But I think that is the intangible aspect of the Indian or Hindu culture, where there's no permanence. So on one hand, where we have temples which are 100, 200 years old, which one of them has mentioned in this article as well. So where we have temples which are sacred, which are, there since generations, and then there's this pandals which are created with so much love and craft and effort, with thousands of people, to be dismantled after 5 days. So I think those are the intangible nuances of the culture that also represent the cycle of life, of how, as we take birth and we go back to where we came from. And to have witnessed that firsthand in Kolkata, and then to come to Melbourne and witness that, I thought that when I came away from home, I was able to connect more on the ritual side of it, to understand the essence of what these spaces do to the diaspora that's here. And it is such a wonderful space for people to come together, to connect with their culture in those. And I think with Melbourne, like unlike India, where we have the festival that goes on for 5 days, we celebrate festivals on weekends in Melbourne. That's what I have realized. But to go, even to get that essence of pandal hopping in Melbourne over 2 or 3 weekends, was something that I felt was a thread from Kolkata to here, like how diasporic communities come together to celebrate their culture, to still feel rooted in a foreign land that they have now come to call home. So I think that is one way where these sacred spaces, although they are transient, they give us a platform to come together, to stay rooted and yet flourish in this new place that we've come to call home. So I think I would conclude on that. And still the art and craft as far as possible, bringing the idols from India, getting in touch with the craftspeople, keeping that craft alive in whatever capacity the people can, so the diaspora can. And I think these are tangible aspects of the intangible heritage that we want to hold on to, even though we move away from our motherland.
Right. Thank you so much, Mitrija, for that, for sharing that story, which obviously continues a thread that we heard through other stories about migration, not just as a letting go of a culture, but to an extent a rediscovery of it as well. So I'm also reminded that there are elements of Pandal in Western cultures, of course, this time of year with Christmas decorations in the front of houses and nativities and so on. But Christmas has so much become a festival of consumption, of acquisition of things, whereas, of course, the Durga Puja is a celebration of transience. These are deities that are to be consigned into the water at the end. So it's an important message. Just we can continue and chat for a little while, but it's good now to maintain our own little ritual and to come together for a Zoom screenshot. So if you'd like to turn on your cameras and show your appreciation to the wonderful people who've shared their stories with us today, that would be very, very nice. I'm sure. Sorry, we don't have any smells or music or anything like that, but I think the smiles in your faces probably tell an important story. So I'll just count you down. If you put on your nice Zoom face, 1, 2, 3. Great, you just made it in time, Saiful. Good, and I'll just turn this